Hello, my fellow readers. This is iDark Symphony 777 with another fanfiction review. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts of the story, and finally, this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world, so please respect that. So, I originally wanted to do this story, Hifuu Detective Agency Case 8, with Case 9, which is based off Unidentified Fantastic Object. However, I kind of ran out of time because I was kind of helping a friend. I was kind of helping a friend out, and also more importantly, like work was kind of a pain this week, so I wasn't able to actually get too into reading because I was falling asleep when I got home. But I wanted to get this review out, so instead I'm just going to do this Subterranean Animism today for this review, and then next week I do both an Identified Fantastic Object, and hopefully I think afterwards is Hitsu Tensoku. I have no idea what the fuck that means. Wrong one. So let's actually catch up to speed. So this is part of the Hifuu Detective Agency series. For those of you who don't know, the Hifuu Detective Agency stars Maribel Hearn and Renko Usami as they're traveling to a place called the Old Hell. This is where Hell used to be before kind of they just transferred Hell. It's kind of a weird situation. They just kind of like, okay, we don't want Hell to be here anymore. We want Hell to move over here. It's like, you got it, boss! And they just wander away. And it's like, okay, here's Old Hell. You other yokai can just live here. Yes, Miss Shiki. And they kind of did. But here's the big thing. I said in my review of the Sumareko story, I said the Hifuu Detective Agency was the most consistently well-written series I ever read across any fan fiction. Yeah, this story just kind of breaks that trend because the story's kind of trash. Like honestly, oh, this story is so much of a disappointment. I don't even know where to start. In all honesty, with what's wrong with it. I know, like the main reason what's wrong with it has to do with Mary and Renko. But before I get to those two, I gotta talk about the plot. So, what is the plot? So, more or less, one day, just randomly one day, a eruption happens in Gensokyo, right near Rimu's house. Immediately, this gigantic pile of white steam just bust out the ground, and out comes water and evil spirits, and everyone's just kind of worried, except for Rimu, who's like, money, 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 money. Yes, I like that money. Because she's too obsessed. It's like, I'm going to turn this place into a spa, and people are going to give me money. Money, 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 money. Meanwhile, everyone else is just completely worried. It's like, oh, what the fuck's going on? Oh, no. Oh, big dog. The evil spirits, what? They're going to possess us, and they're going to do evil things. Like, Rainbow, do something! Too busy counting the imaginary money. So, they find out that the spirits come from this place called Hell, I mentioned earlier. Mary and Renko, of course, mainly Renko, being her usual overly curious self, decides to check out this huge hole that was suggested to them by Patchouli, because Patchouli was actually looking into where these souls are coming from, and she knows that there's like some kind of pact that prevents yokai from going to the Old Hell, and yokai from the Old Hell coming into the Overground. So she's kind of like stuck on what to do. Renko offers, like, why don't you just get us down there? It's like, yes, that actually makes a lot of sense. So they're looking down, and then part of the earth breaks down. Mary and Renko fall. Patchouli's not there anymore because she's trying to figure out how she's gonna get. She was trying to figure out how to get them down there, so she just kind of left to let them like be by themselves. They got caught by Miss Spiderbutt here, Yamame, who basically said, "Ooh, humans! What are you gonna do with us? I'm gonna eat you." Yo, I'm gonna eat you. Renko evokes Suika's name, and Yamame's like, "I can't eat you. Oh, I'll eat you later then." After we find out, then the story kind of just devolves to them wandering around old hell and trying to get hired by Satori Komeji for this superficial job of like, I just need you to find my sister. Yeah, good luck finding her. Mary can see her, but it's still very hard for her because of Koishi's unique attributes, i.e., she's completely dimwit, not dim-witted. She's completely runs on her subconscious, and she manipulates the subconscious of everyone around her, subconsciously. And then they eventually come across the main plot of the actual canon story, which involves a very, very, very dumb bird with the power of nuclear fusion, who just basically just wants to, I just want to blow up the Earth. I just want to blow up everyone on up there. Anyo. I gotta blow up everyone. By fire and hellstone with the power of nuclear. And eventually they do find out the whole situation behind it. Mainly Kanako. I don't own this art. I didn't own the Koichi art. Kanako basically decided, I am going to introduce nuclear fusion to a world that is stuck in like like pre-Edo era Japan. A fucking genius. So now get my generators. Aye, sir. I do like the foreshadowing to it, like Sane actually having like a Game Boy SP, and that she's showing Marissa like the how to play Dragon Quest. Like, look, you can play this. It's like, ooh, I gotta watch it. And even like they draw attention to like Marissa's kleptomaniac tendencies. Like, aren't you sure she's gonna never return it? It's like, well, it's gonna die eventually. What happens then? She has to bring it back. Mm-hmm. And I mean, in terms of plot, I don't have a problem with the plot because I think this is as good as you can get with subterranean animism, because this is like one of the weirder plotted stories, because it's literally just Kanako feeding the Yatagarasu to Utusho, and just like Kanako just simply asking, it's like, I need you to spread faith using the power of Yatagarasu because I want to introduce nuclear fusion. He's like, oh, you want me to kill everyone on the surface? No, that's not what I said. Praise the sun. Because Oku's just a dimwit. She's stupid. At least like the fairies in Gensokyo have an excuse. Like, no, our species are just naturally stupid. No, Oku's like advanced stupid. I even got like the whole sub mystery with Renko going on like this weird tangent. Like, I will feed the truth, and like the truth is like completely off the rockers, even by this series standards. It's like, no, Koichi is no longer becoming a Satori, and Satori basically orchestrated all these events in order to make Koichi into like a perpetual yokai machine of conscious. It's really weird, and of course the customary Renko kind of gets fucked over by the whole thing, because as like Renko herself even mentions, like, wait a minute, Koichi runs on subconscious. Koichi needs to run on subconscious. I don't think I can beat that. Because what is Renko gonna do? It's like, oh hey, this is I want to reveal the truth that this girl needs to be kept, like, acknowledged as something under subconscious in order to live. It's like, who? This girl named Koichi. Who? This Koichi. Who? Floppy hat, green hair, has like a eye over her heart. Who? I can't reveal the truth. No! Because of course, even if you do tell them, it's like, to most people, Koishi's not even a real person. You think anyone's gonna believe that? No. I do like a lot of nuances in the story. Like everyone just kind of everyone have doing their own thing instead of being conjoined to the plot. Like that's what separates the story from a lot of all the other cases. Is all the other cases when it comes to their cases, everyone's kind of connected to that incident. This one is just like everyone's just kind of wandering around doing their own thing, and the only one really connected to like the actual incident are Oku, Rin, and Satori, and everyone else is just kind of just off doing their own thing. And we even had a short cameo from Captain Murasa and Ichiran, who are actually going to appear in this story because they're part of the Mioran crew who appear in Unidentified Fantastic Object. And I even like the detail of Kanako more or less just becoming Renko's Moriarty. Because this story, like the framing device and everything, takes a lot of inspiration from Sherlock Holmes. And of course, every Sherlock Holmes has to have a Moriarty. So having fucking Kanako be Renko's Moriarty for just to simply say, I will outsmart you're outsmarting, and just out bullshitting Renko. It's kind of funny. Because like in Mountain of Fate, Kanako's like the only case where Renko's like proven wrong. Every other case like implied to be right or possibly right. I think subterranean animism is kind of like ambiguous whether or not she might be right or wrong. That's at least different, but Kanako basically is like, nah, you're wrong, fam. Why am I wrong? Did you look in the basement? What's in the basement? My family crypt. Oh. That's right. Broke her heart. And this story, it broke her brain because Kanako basically goes on this massive tangent. It's like, I'm going to show Gensokyo nuclear fission. It's like, but nuclear power does not work. This is the land where common sense does not exist. I will make it happen. I will fucking force it. You can't stop me. It's like, what about what? Okay, so what are you gonna? So why? So you gave a dimwit the power to create nuclear fission on the fly. What are you gonna do? It's like, well, stupid sidekick. So I decided I'm going to give her an Onibashira, or in her words, a control rod. That's not have to do with nuclear fission. That has to do with atomic fission. It's like, this is Gensokyo. Common sense does not exist here. If I say it's a control rod to help with nuclear fusion, it will work with nuclear fusion. Renko Osami.exe does not work. It just completely broke her brain this time. It works. I don't know why. Like everyone, she can outsmart everyone except for Kanako. Just like, it's just so funny. And even then, when it comes to like how Renko behaves in this story compared to everyone else, she's like constantly like on the back burner of the story. She can't get a read on Satori because Satori reads minds passively. She can't get a read on Rin because Rin kind of just behaves like an animal. She can't get a read on Oku because Oku's just a dimwit. Yugi spends half her story drunk off her ass. Yamame is just obsessed with I just want to eat you too. Shisume doesn't talk, and Parsi is just upset. Is just a jealous bitch, but that's like her thing. So so everything that Renko is throughout the whole story is just like it's like doesn't really work because it's just how everyone behaves, and she still somehow finds a way to make it work by just winning over everyone without even trying. And towards the end of the story kind of bleeds into Unidentified Fantastic Object, which is, at least in that story, unlike everything else before it, Renko and Mary are the ones who are actually instigating those events, so I honestly hope something happens involving those two characters, because here's the thing. Here's honestly the thing. as much as I have a lot to say, a lot of good to say about the general plot and how it progresses, how it adapts the events of subterranean animism, that's all I really have to say that's good about the story. Because when it comes to the characters, this is where the story takes a sharp nosedive in quality. Let's get the big ones out of the way. Mary and Renko. So, how do I say this? Mary and Renko are essentially flat characters. They're very, very one-dimensional flat characters. Now, earlier in the series, because I actually read every story up to Subterranean Animals, so I can kind of get up to date because apparently the story like references the first couple cases, and also because of its ties to both to Mountain of Fate and as well as Scarlet with a Rhapsody, I needed to read the whole thing to kind of understand what was going on here. Renko and Mary are essentially flat characters. Earlier in the series, like for instance, Phantasmagoria, there was instances where we might get like actual character development, like Renko having like Renko's curiosity like endangering everyone around her, and Cheeky Eki telling Mary that you have to at least try and try and get her reined in. However, that doesn't happen in the story. I was willing to forgive it with Mountain of Fate and Scarlet with a Rhapsody because of them incorporating the Moria Shrine into everything and kind of having Sine kind of become like a third member of the group that kind of changed up the dynamic. It's like, all right, I'm willing to give that a pass. With every other story, I was willing to give the fact that they're essentially flat characters a pass because of other circumstances around it, like with world building or good character dynamics, or the plot was actually interesting because it was a really interesting take of the events of those games. With Subterranean Animism, it doesn't have any of that besides it like an interesting take on the events of the game, and even then, it's not enough to save it. None of the characters are that interesting. Yamame is one-dimensional. Kasumi doesn't talk because she's just kind of at worst, the only expression you get from her is like her opening her like smiling at Mary, and like you see a bunch of sharp teeth. And think about Kasumi is like as tall as a bucket. Yugi's basically just a stereotypical frat boy who's just obsessed with drinking. He's like, yep, yo, I'm gonna be everyone's best sister. Parsi is just everything that comes out of her mouth is like, I'm jealous of this, I'm jealous of that. I got an 86 this. Nah, I'm jealous of that. Jealous of your, are you making out? I'm jealous of you too. Because that's how that's kind of her power. She manipulates jealousy. Satori only appears like twice in the story, and the first time is just she's spending the whole time just passively mind reading Mary and Renko, and the second time she's just behind a curtain because Renko doesn't want her mind read again. It's like, well, Renko just completely just okay. I'm gonna go do my Renko things. Ren is just and Oku just Oku only shows up like once in the story. And she's just an idiot. Like there's just not much to her. And even Koichi, who would have been the hardest character, right? Because Koichi basically is probably one of the hardest characters to write if you're going by her canon personality. And here's the thing with Koichi. Every single other character at least try to keep their personality as close as they can to their canon personality. Koichi, the author, completely just goes completely different. Like just this is just not canon Koichi, because she operates more on like, oh, she had the same ideas and likes and dislikes as like Koichi FC was before, and she only like barely operates on subconscious. Subconscious just guides her actions, which I guess is true, but like her core, like Koishi's core personality doesn't really feel like Koichi, which would have been fine if not for the fact that the author goes out of his way to keep every other character as close as they can to their canon personalities. So it's such a jarring thing to have everyone up to this point, including Mary and Renko. Mary and Renko are pretty much almost one for one their personalities in the audiobook, in the CDs, because those two characters are from like CDs. But then you completely change. Well, I mean, Sumareko, the author does change her personality, but like I don't, but like because of the whole thing with Gaiden, it's unknown if that's actually canonical to the events of the plot, because of the whole thing with like Gaiden's like in big, like I don't, until I get to last story, I don't know if Sumareko's personality in that story is canon to it, because there's so many unknowns, because we don't know, because we only know what she's like in Gensokyo. We don't know what she's like outside of Gensokyo, and like, but with Koichi, it's very obvious that he had to drastically change how she behaves, which is such a weird, off-putting thing, and I just, it's just weird. And then we get back to Mary and Renko. So I actually want to thank my friend Starlit Duck, because I was talking to her because I was kind of expressing my frustration over this story, because when I gave her my thoughts on the story, like just a bare bones thoughts, I told her this is so disappointing because everything that made the other stories good is not here, and I was like, I didn't really know why. And so she sent me a message saying, I'm getting tongue twisted. Isn't Renko and Mary like those types of flat characters where they're meant to meant to interact with like more interesting characters? And yes, those types of characters do exist. So I actually thought about it. I thought about it. I went to sleep on it, and I used her knowledge. I used her percentage for what she told me as like, okay, what did Subterranean Animism do differently from every other story in the series up to this point? And it took a while, but I eventually got it. So let's actually go back to the first story, The Scarlet Devil. So bear with me. In the process of events for Scarlet Devil, start with Renko and Mary traveling to on a train to Sumareko's grandfather's house, where they enter Sumareko's room, and they find the notebook that says the Hifuu Club, and they're kind of curious, and they find the amber, which takes them back to Gensokyo. Then they end up in Volar, in the Scarlet Devil Mansion. Volar is basically the library of that big mansion that is owned by Patchouli. Then they meet Kawakuma and Patchouli, and then they meet Sakuya, they meet Ramelia, they meet Mei Ling, and they meet Flandre. Now, that's not all the characters in the SOD. There's still Rumia and Cerno. Cerno actually doesn't appear in the story. Rumia appears at the very end, but since they're not connected to the Scarlet Devil Mansion, that's kind of a fair balance. But here's what happens. Throughout the entire story, Renko and Mary are talking to these characters almost the entire time. There's any time when they're not talking to the characters, it's usually Mary disposing some like a long, like a paragraph or two of somewhat purple prose, basically to kind of describe what's going on, or give some exposition on certain details surrounding the conversation that's going on to kind of lead into what's going to happen after. And that's fine. Mary and Renko do talk to each other, but it's very rare that they talk to each other on their own. And that was the case for cases 1 to 7. With case 8, the opposite happened, because they're in a situation where like yokai are very willing to eat them. Like the only reason they don't choose to eat them is because Yugi kind of like backs them up, but they're still like looking and licking their chops and stuff like that. Mary and Renko spend a lot of time only talking to themselves. Like when they're Like when they get captured by Yamame and they get sent to, then they're kind of wandering into the old hell. Yamame barely talks to them, and she only really offers like a sentence or two. So most of the time is just Mary and Renko just keep talking to each other. And even after that, they spend a lot of time when they're just not with anyone. And that really hurts the story because this story makes it obvious that the author has no idea what to do with Mary and Renko in terms of like character development. They have characters. They do have they do have character moments. They do have a lot of depth to them, but they don't have any. But they don't grow. They haven't grown. And like earlier in the series, I would have forgiven him because like with Scarlet Devil and Perfect Cherry Blossom, there was like a lot of stuff that needed to be set up, like introducing Yukari and introducing like the scenario and like the concept of perception equals power that Gensokyo is trying to have in these stories. But this is case 8. At this point, there should have been some development, especially in they're completely out of the water. Like they're in a land where like Ringo can't help him. Rand probably can't help him. Yukari definitely can't help him because she's purposely trying to avoid Renko. There's even at the end where like, oh, Mary runs into Koichi again, and what Koichi does? Grabs it, shows a knife and tries to stab Mary in the heart. Yeah, Koichi flat out tries to murder Mary. Granted, it's more of a subconscious thing. It's like, and she only does like one swing, and then she's like, "Oh, you dodged. Like, you guess you win. Let's play something else." Because like, okay, that's Koichi's thing. It really is such a weird situation in this specific story where you want to see all these interesting characters, all these interesting dynamics, how they interact with Mary and Renko, and all that's completely screwed because the author put so much focus on just Mary and Renko communicating without any way to get us invested in the character. Once you take away the dynamics that they have, like more interesting character, what you're left with is just a pair of soulless, heartless, impossible characters to care for. I can't care for Renko because guess what? She's almost Mary Sue in this specific story, like how she systematically wins over everyone without even trying, just by being charismatic. Where if this was a real a situation to kind of have them grow as a character, it would have made more sense for Mary to take center stage in this story because think about it. She gets foiled by Kanako again. She gets foiled by Satori because they're mind reading. She gets foiled by Oku because she's a dimwit. Meanwhile, everyone seems to connect more with Mary because of other circumstances. So it would have made more sense for Renko to go, okay, I know I don't think I'd be able to do this one because everyone doesn't trust me. So I'll just leave this one to Mary. I'll leave this one to Mary and just have it would have been a neat reversal, like showing Mary how far she came, or Renko taking a back seat as they just want to survive and get out of there. It would have been a much more interesting story because it also would have had some development, or even so since everyone legitimately wants to kill them and eat them, the author could have had Mary kind of just put her foot down, so showing some kind of backbone. But no, Mary is still an extreme doormat because Renko will just brute force everything without and even has Shiki Eki, the one character who flat out tells him, it's like, your curiosity is literally gonna kill everyone around you, to just have her give up on her next appointment. It's like, I give up. And it undoes everything that the end of Phantasmagoria would have implied. And also everything that happened in Scarlet Wither Rhapsody, because that part of that story had kind basically putting her foot down in favor of Mary, basically telling us, you're literally going to abandon all these children to just go gallivanting. You're a teacher. You stay here. And, and Mary and Kine watching over Renko. It undoes all of that because the author just wanted Renko to go on this wacky Sherlock Holmes-esque persona. And even Sherlock Holmes actually got character development in his story where he starts to actually care about Watson and actually, is actually teaching him the tools of the trade and how to be a detective and all that. And Watson himself also develops as he's learning more and more rules on how to run a detective agency, how Sherlock Holmes does it, and even gains like a lot of respect for Holmes and how he operates and how he does this. And I think even like the end of the original book series is implied that when Holmes retires, Watson basically takes Holmes' place and he applies all that he learned throughout the story to running his own detective agency. I don't know the ending of Sherlock Holmes, but that's what I've heard. But this is the eighth case. The eighth case where Renko has won over everyone with just being charismatic, but has no substance behind her growing as a character or like learning anything. And this is the eighth case where Mary is just a doormat who just lets Renko do whatever he wants without even trying to put her foot down because of the dangers of everything around her. It's such a, and even if they had Mary and Renko interact with the characters more often, none of the characters are that interesting. It's such a surreal case where I didn't like anything about any of the characters. I just didn't. Pacing wise, the story with how much I get why the story had to be the longest because the Old Hell is like a one and done location. I don't think they ever go into Old Hell. I know like Kid Sensoku technically goes into the Blazing Hells, but they just go into Oku's home. They don't actually go into like Old Hell in general. They just go into Oku's home and that's it. I think Obelisk Masquerade does it too. I'm not sure, but they say it could have been longer to gotta give. No, it really should have been longer to give not only Mary and Renko some like more like some kind of development to kind of progress their characters forward and kind of give them something, but also kind of have them interact more with the other characters because again, none of the characters are interesting, especially Satori who could have easily been like a counter to Renko throughout like their conversations. It could have. Grammar wise, sentence structure wise, even the sentence structure is like kind of weak compared to this because it does focus a lot on Mary's inner mind, like how she's bridging everything. And it's just so much concept and everything. Even when they're like even when Mary and Renko are communicating, it's just there's just something off about everything. Like the sentence structure, it's a more curt take. There's not many situations where the sentence structure kind of shows what it kind of relies more on telling than showing, which is another thing that the story really usually excels at. The story is really good at doing showing, usually through Renko kind of ruminating and kind of like answering everything and everyone's reaction to the whole thing. This one's kind of like muted because no one really reacts to anything. It's like, oh, Renko figured something out. It's like, oh, okay, just moving on. It's such a weird thing because the pacing's not good, the sentence structure's not good. I think the story actually has a bunch of grammar errors, but I can't because like this week I've been so busy with work I couldn't remember where some of the grammar errors. I do think there are some grammar errors near the end, but don't quote me on that one. I could be wrong, but it's really fast paced for what it's trying to tell because the story spends so much time on Mary and Renko. The sentence structure just seems off because because of the whole dynamic between everyone in the story, especially since at the end, it's actually revealed that let's see where is it? Right here, that it was actually originally supposed to be 8 cases. So like this, it was actually originally supposed to be longer. And it's like, well, I didn't want to make it too long, so I just basically, because everyone was going to be like their own separate case, and Mary and Renko were going to solve like a bunch of cases, like a case for Yamame, a case for Kasume, a case for Parsi and Yugi, and all that. And I said he just condensed them all and just focused on Koichi, and then the story with Koichi just became a mess because the author just completely butchered Koishi's character. This is like, honestly, I think this is like one story that really didn't need that dumb mystery Renko going on a random tangent thing, because I think it really should not have been here. I honestly think that's the story's biggest flaw. Is the story really didn't need it because of circumstances behind it, with like they're in a city where they're trying to survive. The plot should have been get them out and at the very least, have them interact with Ichiran and Captain Murasa to set up UFO. But that's really it. It's really just a bad situation. Yeah, see, I intended for Renko to solve a mystery for every one of 8 characters introduced in the prologue, and the initial question which opened the story has been a remnant of that. Anything that would have made the story even longer, though. If the story needed to be that long, it should have been that long. I can't. Okay. I think I talked about all I can with like the plot and characters for the story. Would I recommend this? No, I can't. As much as I want to keep up the idea of this story is still good, the interesting take on subterranean animism is all the story has going for it. Everything else is completely underwhelming because of the simple fact the author just has Mary and Renko only talk to each other for so long that you just immediately realize, wow, these characters suck! Without any interesting character dynamics to hide that. And that's basically what the other stories did. They had interesting character dynamics between Mary and Renko and all the other characters that appear in that story to hide the fact that these two characters are one-dimensional. With subterranean animism, there's no dynamic interactions. There's no dynamic characters. The plot is not that interesting. The best part of the story is just Kanako pulling one over on Renko. Kanako, who was introduced in Mountain of Faith, a completely different story with better character dynamics. I can't really suggest what changes because the author just disappeared. But if I had to change anything, the author really should have just done the original idea. Had 8 mysteries, so that way each little arc has Mary and Renko kind of communicating with that specific character. So that way, even if you were going to do the whole, they weren't really going to develop, you at least have an interesting character development for each of them, like Mary and Renko communicating and establishing a dynamic with Yamame and Kasume and Parsi and Yugi and all the other characters. It would have made more sense, and it would have been a better use for subterranean animism, the whole disconnectedness of it. But that's really all I have to say that would change it. If either that or just give them character development. It really is that simple. Like you could have You could have had Renko getting hurt, like actually getting hurt, like suffering, like literally getting some kind of injury. It doesn't matter what. It could have been like a broke, like even like a large gash, like something, anything that showed the danger to kind of galvanize Mary into wanting to put her foot down, even if it wouldn't succeed. The fact that like Renko actually getting hurt and kind of suffering for her obsessive curiosity, and Mary having to put her foot down, it would have been a step in the right direction. It wouldn't have been a lot of character development, but it would have been something. That's really all Mary and Renko need at this point. They are right there being very good characters. They have the dynamic. They have the dynamic between each other. They have the character traits. They have the character depth. They just don't have the develop. They just are not growing as characters throughout 8 stories. They have not changed. They have not grown. Just anything with them. Anything. So, I don't have anything else to say about the story. I want to count my breath for UFO, but I hope UFO does it because Mary and Renko are actually doing that. They're causing that incident. So hopefully something changes. So this has been Dark Symphony 777 and cut.